so it wouldn't fall under the ordinance.
Also, we're just doing residential
That's all this
structures
is, yeah, this is all this is, residential and accessory buildings to a residential. So a garage on a residential.
Well, that's even more discriminatory, because there are a lot of structures around that are just as, are worse than houses.
There's a whole other code that was recently established for commercial or I should say non-residential buildings. that
Well,
was
hey, if
also-
we're gonna go into the houses, we ought to go into the sheds.
But we can go into the sheds if they're on residential property. But if you want to go after non-residential structures, like that are on their lots individually, whether that's everyone's favorite target, the old food line building, or any other structure that's not a house, that's a different code that would be required to be developed.
Well, if we're gonna do it, and I don't wanna do it, period, but if we're gonna do it, it should not be discriminatory. It should be done for buildings and for residences.
I think we have more eyesores in the town of Summerfield that are not private homes than we have private homes that need to be addressed.
I think we're putting the impetus of this ordinance on aesthetics when the impetus of this ordinance is safety.
Okay. That's
And,
that too.
yes, and of course, given the fact that residences are the structures within our town that are meant for human habitation in its fullest sense, that's why we as staff, I think with Michael's lead, decided to lead it specifically to residences. You can take a certificate of occupancy away from a business so they can't operate the business anymore. You can't necessarily walk into somebody and say, your house is unsafe. So the business, there are other ways to make sure that a business that is not structurally sound is not occupied from the safety standpoint. The aesthetics issue is the different side of the coin. This addresses both.
If a business is unsafe enough not to be occupied, isn't it unsafe, period?
I would argue yes. I guess going back to what we looked at from the staff's perspective as the impetus in addressing this, first and foremost it was safety. Secondarily it was aesthetics, and the aesthetics leads to safety. I think there are those of us that look at a structure and say, I got a pretty good guess that that might have some interior problems as well as exterior problems. But we're here as staff for your input. We would like this to go.
So we need to determine tonight whether we wish to go the next step or not. And the next step would be what?
Well, you need to determine first of all whether you've had enough discussion at council level. And either continue this discussion if you want another meeting, or at this point you feel like you've had enough discussion. Then you need to give us a decision as to whether you want us to move forward, schedule a public hearing in the near future. Probably not in November, because we'll have to advertise it, so it probably would be December. And just have a public hearing to discuss, let the public discuss the code and structures in the town that they feel would be appropriate to be inspected under this, and get the feedback from the public. And then make another decision as to whether you want to move forward or not based on that input.
That's what I feel like needs to be done. I feel like the public needs to come in and discuss it with them and see how they feel about it.
I don't think it should be done 2 weeks before Christmas. I don't think you can have anybody here.
I actually was thinking that myself, but we probably could delay it to January.
What initiated this?
Complaints. Discussion of council 7 months ago about the fact that we need tools necessary to enforce certain levels of housing. Dilapidated buildings and residential structures, and this is one of the tools that can be used.
That came up during the policies and procedures and the budget meetings, right?
Well, I don't know if it was
Yeah, during the planning portion, I know we were discussing code enforcement.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the code enforcement issues I brought up.
And so, you're the code enforcer now,
I am.
and tell me what you do as code enforcer. You just drive around town looking at buildings that need,
No, as far as our code enforcement, all we have is basically a nuisance ordinance currently. And so with that, we work primarily off of complaints. Now, we do, sometimes if I'm riding around and see something that's just, blatant obvious, we'll go ahead. But the complaints we get, the nuisance things are usually for things such as high grass, junk in yards, junk vehicles, let's see. Those are usually the biggest ones from the nuisance ordinance. And then we also have code violations that go along with their development ordinance and zoning issues, such as our sign ordinance. We've got, I don't know if George still has them down here, but there was about 50 different signs that collected here, I guess 3 to 4 weeks ago. I usually go out about every other week to try to, clean up signs that are illegal here in town. And we usually give people a one-time chance. We'll give them a call and say, we picked up your sign that, you either didn't have a permit for it or you had it in the wrong place. And, we got it here, you can pick it up from us. And several do that. And then the second time, we will start a notice of violation on them, where they could be fined for having illegal signs. Same thing with the nuisance. We give them, an opportunity to clean it up. And if they don't start working on it, we start a nuisance violation on them.
so it's basically what people can see from the street.
As
Is
far
that
as
what you're
the
saying?
nuisance, it most certainly is.
So do you get people calling up and saying, my neighbors live in a rat infested home with a roof falling in, come and do something about it?
A lot of times what we'll get is, because right now we don't have the housing, we get the, my neighbor's got, they hadn't cut their grass all summer, they got 3 junk cars, and they got a pile of, I don't know what it is, out behind their house. And I'm seeing snakes, I'm seeing rats, I'm seeing, and so we go out and, try to make cordial contact with them at first. And, it's not always the easiest thing, but
So what I'm saying is, it's
Yes.
what people see from the
it
street.
is. It is as far as our nuisance ordinance goes.
Okay.
I'm going to suggest that we go ahead with, develop enough information for a public hearing and go for it if we have enough votes for it. Again, I've seen what can develop and can see the situation where we didn't have the ability to handle it, or in that respect, law enforcement didn't have the ability to handle it, whereas we could be looking at a far different thing with just housing with, no heat, no whatever, and whether it's a person owner or whether it's a rental type property. I just think we need to go the next step in this public hearing.
I think it should be put on the website immediately too. We're gonna go that route as proposed.
We're gonna move forward with it.
We got a motion,
I'm not motion to move forward with it.
move forward with it for a public hearing.
For a public
January.
hearing back in January.
That sounds okay. Michael, as far as potential, if we need to
You need it for February.